Hello, my name is Kim Shockley, and I'm the coordinator of Pathways of Spiritual Leadership. I'd like to talk to you this morning about being a lay leader within the life of your congregation. And I'm hoping that as you watch this video, you and your pastor are working together to learn the role of a lay leader. We're going to look at what the discipline says. There are 6 statements that define the role of the lay leader within the congregation. And we're going to compare those and contrast those things with what modern questions might be for understanding this role within the life of the church. So we are going to share a screen and a PowerPoint presentation and hopefully help you to interact with what the lay leader does within the life of the congregation. So here we go. The GROW team of the annual conference, Growing Spiritual Transformational Leaders, has defined these leaders as those who engage others in abundant Christian love that transforms lives wherever they go. And so we're seeing the role of the lay leader, particularly through the lens of a spiritual transformational leader. So in order to do that, we first have to define why. Simon Sinek says, always start with the why. And so we want to reflect for a moment about the why that might be in operation for your congregation. So one way to think about this is in this square format. Is this our why? That we talk about our buildings and our facilities, our staff, our structure, our organization, our programs? Is this the work that encompasses the leadership of the life of the church? Is that why we exist, to have and do these things? Or is this triangle our why? How we love God, how we love everyone, how we make disciples. These are the things that Jesus taught us. Matthew 22 is the great commandment. We are to love God, we are to love everyone. And Matthew 28 tells us that we are to make disciples everywhere we go, and that God will be with us. So, which is our why? The triangle or the square? I'll be honest, most times when I visit with congregations, I do find the triangle, the love God, love everyone, and make disciples, but a lot of times it looks like this, within the square. I propose today that we need to flip that image around, that the triangle needs to encompass the square. And so we have our conversation about buildings and facilities in terms of how will they help us love God, love everyone, make disciples? How do our programs help us love God, love everyone, make disciples? Our structure, our organization, our staff, how are they helping us love God, love everyone, make disciples? That's the focus of the conversation for leaders. Now, in order to have a really healthy, vital congregation, I think each of us, each person, needs to be reflecting our own triangle within the life of the congregation. So each of these little triangles represents a person who is also working to develop how well they love God, love everyone, and are making other disciples. All of that is foundationally built on Jesus' commandments and commissions to us. This is what Jesus wants us to do. Love God, love everyone, make disciples. Each one of us, everywhere we go. So, with your pastor, have some conversation about what is your reaction to this framework for how we think about the work of the church. What kind of thoughts just swirled through your mind, and can you share them with your pastor? What does this mean for you as a leader and a disciple of Jesus? These are important questions that you can talk about now. So please pause the recording and take some time to do that while you're together. So let's look at the 6 responsibilities of a lay leader as they're put out to us in the Book of Discipline. This is paragraph 251, and from the Book of Discipline 2016. The first thing it says is that the lay leader is to foster awareness of the role of laity within the congregation and through their ministries in the home, workplace, community, and the world, and find ways within the community of faith to recognize those ministries. So the question for us today is, how does God want to use me or each person within the life of our congregation now? This is a discipleship question, and it talks very clearly about how we foster awareness of the role of laity within the congregation and everywhere they go. And how do we help each person find their place within the life of the congregation? Everywhere I go. So here's an opportunity to just pause for a few minutes and see if you have some thoughts about these questions as it relates to number 1, responsibility of the lay leader. Evelyn Underhill said, God made us in order to use us, and use us in the most profitable way for God's purpose, not ours. To live a spiritual life means subordinating all other interests to that single fact. Parker Palmer says vocation does not come from willfulness. It comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. I think those 2 thoughts reflect this image very well. All of us working together to love God, love everyone, make disciples. So the second responsibility of the lay leader is to meet regularly with the pastor to discuss the state of the church and the needs for ministry. Since my hope is that you are with your pastor right now, you will be able to talk about this and the questions as they arise here. How are our lay people finding ways to live into a calling for ministry as we meet needs within the community? This is an opportunity for the lay leader and the pastor to have a regular conversation about how we as a congregation, all our little triangles, are finding our ways to meet needs within the community. What is the plan for leadership development? Do we have an opportunity available or a plan for folks where we recognize their giftedness for leadership, that we can help them to move into a leadership track? This is something else that the GROW team at the annual conference can also help you to define if this is something you need help with. So meeting regularly with a pastor. How often do you meet with a pastor to discuss the state of the church? What do you do to pay attention to the church's needs for ministry? What are the plans for leadership development? Write down an action step you will take to meet regularly with your pastor to discuss how lay people are finding ways to live into a calling for ministry. Take the time now to work through these questions and to take seriously that first step that will help you to move forward with this. The third responsibility of a lay leader is to be on a lot of committees. Membership in the Charge Conference and the Church Council, the Committee on Finance and Committee on Nominations and Leadership Development, and the Committee on Staff-Parish Relations. When, along with the pastor, the lay leader shall serve as an interpreter of the actions and programs of the annual conference and the general church. To be better equipped to comply with this responsibility, it is recommended that a lay leader also serve as a lay member of annual conference. That's a lot of committees to attend. but there is purpose behind this. How are we empowering laity to be in ministry? Is one of the foci that the lay leader can take when they're meeting with all of these different groups. You have the opportunity to see what are we doing in terms of nominations and leadership development? What is going on with the finance team? How are our staff pastor parish relationships going throughout the life of the church? How are we empowering laity to be in ministry? And how are we encouraging the culture of call within the congregation? Did you know that it's the responsibility of the Staff Parish Relations Committee to identify, encourage, and empower those who might be experiencing a call to professional ministry? You can influence this work in your role as a lay leader. One of my concerns is if we continue to retire 25 or more pastors every year and only ordain a few, what does this mean for our future? It is the responsibility of every staff parish relations committee to identify people, encourage them, and empower them if they're experiencing a call to professional ministry. And you as the lay leader have the opportunity to recognize that and to help make sure that this process happens. Who needs to help our people hear God's call? We are all in this together. Number 4 talks about continuing involvement in study and training opportunities to develop a growing understanding of the church's reason for existence and the types of ministry that will most effectively fulfill the church's mission. How does God want to use us now? It's a significant question for every church, and I would propose that it must be answered in order for us to have a future. One of the ways in which our grow and equip staff teams and our network of coaches are helping congregations to be able to answer this question is by providing a coming to clarity as a workshop day and follow-up coaching that helps us to answer these 9 questions. Why do we exist as a church? Who does the Spirit call us to be? Very significant, how do we behave? What do we currently do and for whom? Where is Christ leading us to go next? Why is it important? How can we best move forward? Who does what by when? And how will we know we are progressing? These 9 questions will help to clarify the work of your church in a significant way that will help you to be able to make decisions that result in actual living out who it is God calls you to be. Very significant work. And we have staff teams and coaches ready to help you do this work together. Number 5 is assisting and advising the church council of opportunities available and the needs expressed for a more effective ministry of the church through its laity in the community. So the question we want to ask today is, how am I paying attention to the giftedness of our people and the needs of my community? How do I speak what I notice into our leadership conversations? Are you actively paying attention to the community itself, understanding the needs that may be arising, looking for places where your congregation can meet those needs, and be able to help the conversation get started about how that could happen? That's a significant role for the lay leader to be paying attention. One of my favorite book resources is Elaine Heath's book, God Unbound. And in a chapter of this book, she shares with us 4 postures of contemplation, which become a way for us to interact with the world today. And she calls these postures of contemplation. The first one is show up, be present. Secondly, pay attention. I think I've said that more than once already in this event today. Pay attention. Look, pay attention to your people, pay attention to your community. See where God might be in the work you're doing together. And then participate with God. If you see an opportunity in your community and you see a place where you can meet that need, that's an opportunity to participate with God. And the energy that comes from that then is what the Holy Spirit uses to fuel the work of God in the world. Now, the fourth part of contemplation is the tricky one. She says to release the outcome. And she says we release the outcome because God is God and we are not. Now, the way I interpret that is to be able to say most churches expect that if they meet a need in the community, if they do an outreach program, if they do, like trunk or treat, for example, the expectation, whether you say it or not, is that the people that come to trunk or treat are somehow going to magically show up on Sunday morning at your worship service. I would propose that, yes, that is the underlying expectation or outcome that you want from your trunk or treat program. Now, Elaine says to release the outcome because God is God and we are not, which means that instead of getting disappointed when we didn't get what we thought we would get, we still continue to show up, pay attention, and participate with God, because ultimately we don't really know what God is doing in the lives of the people we touch. And it's only through increased opportunities, increased relationship building, where we get to know these folks on a different level, a deeper level, that the outcomes might end up being what we expect. So it's a challenge to our discipleship to trust that God is doing something in the midst of how we interact with ourselves, other people, and God. But for us to get disappointed because it doesn't turn out the way we want, that can be a real struggle. And we have to overcome that. Because usually what happens when we don't get what we want, we stop doing it. And then the opportunity to interact with people and build relationships is completely gone. So, show up, pay attention, participate with God, and release the outcome. So, pause the tape here once these questions come up and have some time to talk together about what is your initial reaction to this way of being in the world, and what do you need to do to practice these postures daily? How will you show up, pay attention, participate with God, and release the outcome? Spend a few minutes talking about this. Number 6, the final piece, is informing the laity of training opportunities provided by the annual conference. Where possible, the lay leader shall attend training opportunities in order to strengthen his or her work. The lay leader is encouraged to become a certified lay servant. So the questions for us to think about. Number 1, how am I practicing I see in you conversations? Connecting opportunities to individuals' giftedness. If you know that there's a training opportunity coming up and you know of a person or persons within the life of your congregation that could benefit from the training, how do you practice a conversation with them to help them see the connection between the training and their giftedness? I see in you. I see in you. These are conversations that help us develop a culture of call and accountable discipleship. With whom do you need to have an I see in you conversation this week? You know, when most of us look back, we realize that it's these kinds of conversations that have helped us to develop as spiritual transformational leaders anyway. Someone else saw God at work in our lives and encouraged us to take the necessary steps to develop them. One really powerful way that we are offering, well, let me say this first from the book Hero Maker. If the people around you cannot get a yes, if they don't get the I see in you conversation, they won't discover the dream that God has for their life or reach their redemptive potential, or they may not get it as quickly as they could. So it is our responsibility to encourage folks through I see in you conversations. Let me say a word about GROW, Living as Spiritual Transformational Leaders. This is a new material that we've developed in the GROW office to help teach how we live as spiritual transformational leaders within our world today. This material is available through our lay servant ministries. And if you have someone who's been trained to lead it, you can use it within the life of your local church. So we have 8 sessions, and they look at 8 different things: practicing the presence, how do we stay in love with God, generous gratitude, discipleship as relationship, inviting others into discipleship relationships, living as spiritual transformational leaders. This talks about personal discernment, vision, strategic focus. These first 4 lessons are truly about developing each person as a spiritual transformational leader. And so it's a more personal look at leadership development. The last 4 are more about how we lead together. How are we change makers for God? Can we be mentors that multiply? How do we reach, love, and witness and action? And finally, community and collaboration in the commons. How do we work together to make a difference where we are? So this material is available. Like I said, trained leaders can use it anyway within the annual conference. And if you're interested in training, you can contact me. Finally, as your local church's lay leader, what is one takeaway that will help you to live as a spiritual transformational leader who engages others in abundant Christian love that transforms lives wherever you go? Spend some time talking about this question as you end your time together today. Thank you. It is our pleasure as the GROW team to be able to resource developing leaders, and specifically as we live into being spiritual transformational leaders. Who do we need to be in the life of our world today? So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact either myself or Kevin Witt, KWITT @SUMC.org, or K Shockley, SHOCKLEY @SUMC.org. Thank you.